And we move to another definition of wisdom as the proper use and the proper decision-making properties based upon the accumulation of those facts. So when we say, well, you weren't wise in that circumstance or situation, it's because you may not have had all of the facts, and so you make a hasty decision, which is a definite lack of wisdom on your part, because you should, as a pastor, accumulate all the facts before you make that decision. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
That's fair to say.
And do we not live our life that way?
Yes, we should.
I learned this with my own kids. You know, I had two boys. They were 18 months apart. Some would say my wife had them, but that's another story. I contributed. But I had two boys 18 months apart. And they were masters. When they got in trouble, blaming the other one. And I didn't have, and I tell you that I disciplined on the basis of who made the loudest noise. And sometimes my discipline, whether it was you're confined to your room for an hour or whatever it was, I wasn't much for spanking, I'm sorry to say. I did on occasion, but mainly my kids had the spirit where you could kind of correct them by talking and taking away privileges, and that's what I did. But a lot of times I made the wrong decisions because I didn't really have the fact. I didn't really know who did what. Mm-hmm. And so we have a tendency in our English mindset to live like this. But Hebraically, this is totally different. It doesn't even have the same meaning. Because when we say that God blew into the man his character of life and wisdom, we define wisdom differently in terms of Hebrew than we do English or Greek. Because wisdom is the ability in Hebrew to handle yada. Now, interpreted knowledge, fact, but not to the Hebraic mind. Because when we use the word yada, it is from the word yad, which means hand. In fact, I can say to you that one of the names of God, the primary name of God, the proper name of God, the Yod, He, Vav, He. The first letter of that word is the Yod, and it is representative of the back of the hand. And do you remember when Jesus says, not one jot, one tittle will pass from this law until all is fulfilled? The jot that he's talking about, not the tittle, but the jot is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it is the back of one's hand. So, when we talk about yada, we're talking about not only touching and getting to know and becoming familiar with and learning by experience, but we need to see, because of that yod in the name of God, that it is God who begins to draw and woo and to lead people into the place where they can have experiences with Him. Now, if we go back to that garden scene when Jesus is arrested, that is what is so symbolic about that statement. Do you betray me with a kiss? Do you betray me
with the symbol of intimacy?
With the symbol of intimacy. Because I have not led you down this road. It is not by my hand, by my yod, that you're doing this thing. It's not by me that you're doing it. And you've taken a symbol of intimacy and relationship, of learning, of getting to know, to learn by experience. And this is after all this time that Judas spent with Jesus. And all of this time, learning Him, getting to know Him. But his heart wasn't right. And you used the very picture created in Genesis to portray me. Now, another interesting thing happened in that garden. If you'll recall, it made Peter mad. I love Peter. He's human. Now, what did Peter do?
Cut off the ear of one of the soldiers, actually the chief soldier, correct?
All right. Now, who was that guy?
He had a different role to play later on. He was next in line, if I remember right, to take over as high priest in the temple.
All right. Now, see, we have this idea that Peter's all angry, and so out of anger, he draws a sword and whacks this guy's ear off. Now, before I give you the explanation of this, what did Jesus do after that guy's ear was off?
I love this.
What did he do with that ear?
He picked it back up and placed it back on the man.
And healed the ear.
Healed the ear.
Now, why in the world do you think that Peter cut that guy's ear off?
Can I tell you?
You go ahead.
Since he was next in line to be high priest, if you have any blemish at all on your body, you cannot be high priest. So he was doing it saying, if you're taking Jesus away from me, I'm going to take away what you most want, which is to be the next high priest.
You take away the most important thing in my life, I'm going to take away from you the most important thing in your life. And Jesus heals that man's ear.
Yeah, because do you believe when he healed it, there was no scar tissue left?
I believe it.
I believe it too.
I believe it. Now we could spend the next
halfway. Yes.
We could spend the next 20 minutes of that. It's on that subject, but we can't do that. Now we have historical information, Pastor. Historical information. We're not making this stuff up. We have events in history where the cutting off of an ear has rendered someone incapable of being high priest. We have historical information of this fact. And that's just another reason why we need to understand the culture at the time to understand the depth of what's going on.
Yes, that makes sense.
Because Peter gets a bad rap for being mad. Well, it's not about being mad, but that shows you the degree of love that Peter had in his heart towards Jesus, which is also a reflection back to Genesis chapter 3. He, more than any, in my opinion, of the 12 disciples, understood what it was like to walk in an intimate relationship with the Redeemer of the universe, even in the midst of his own failure, sins, even when he looked at things physically and not spiritually, he still had that kind of attitude towards his Lord. He wasn't trying to get himself all cleaned up before he came to Jesus. He let Jesus bring him to the point of intimacy and cleaning up his life. He never made fun of Peter's humanity.
And everyone that he chose, they came as they were.
They came as they were. I don't like fishing because I think it's a waste of time. But one thing I can assure you of, that you never clean a fish before you catch it.
No, you don't.
And that's the idea here. That God blew into that man the nishmat. I'm uncomfortable because I don't want to offend anybody that's listening to us, but God kissed him on the mouth and blew into him. And if that bothers you, think of it as CPR. He blew into him the nishmat, and man became animated. And there's another interesting word here. Man became a living nephesh. Now that's going to take some time to get into. So I'm just going to whet your appetite for it today. Mm-hmm. Nishmat is a word that's been translated soul. But it is peculiar. Because soul, if we look that up in Greek or Hebrew, is referring to the mind of man. It is the seat of the emotions. It's the seat of the will. It's the seat of decision making. But there's something unique about the word nephesh, because it does not contain the idea of morality or mortality. It does not contain the idea of corruption or sin or damage. It is a word that is used to describe this man that he called Adam. Now, it's important that you understand for later on that he called this hunk of clay Adam, Ha-Adam, the man. And he created him from the dust of the ground, the Adamah, and blew into his nostrils the nishmat, and man became animated, and he became nephesh, a man created in innocence. No corruption, no decay, no sin, no death, none. And when we talk about later about the sin coming in, and why God put them outside the garden, this will totally blow you away. It's enough in this episode to understand that God blew into the man that which gave him the capacity to not only become alive, but to handle the yada of God. You were created to walk in an intimate relationship with your Creator. And even though sin has come in, and we'll have another word in Hebrew that describes that act later on, but what I want you to understand is that even if you are not born again today, if you have no relationship with God, and if you're finding your sense of security and peace in anything but Jesus Christ, I want you to clearly understand that you were created with not only the capacity to walk in an intimate relationship with your Creator, but you were created with the need to do so. Nothing will fill that void but God Himself through the person of Jesus Christ, your Redeemer. He's created you to handle the yada of God. We hope today that you've been blessed by this insight into the Word of God. We are going to go farther in this our next time, and we ask that you would join us for this exciting story about how you, not just Adam, but how you were created by God with the purpose and design to walk in an intimate relationship with Him. Pastor, that's why I like tying this to 2 Peter. He's given you an instruction on how to do it. But in Genesis, God's given you an instruction that He created you for the purpose of walking in an intimate relationship with Him. May you be blessed today. Would you join us? It would be our honor to have you with us again as we continue this study. May God bless you this week.
Are broken, I can't fly anymore. Lord, my eyes are crying, I can't see through my tears. Lord, my heart is breaking, too much pain beyond my years. Oh Lord, you've got to save me from the depths of this despair. Oh Lord, you've got to help me, there's no one left to care. And He said, fly with your mended wings into your Father's arms of love. Fly with your mended wings, the heavens behold my love for you, so fly. They shall mount up with wings as eagles, and they will run and be weary not. They shall walk and not faint. They will fly with their mended wings into the far.